Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
We may have some more folks coming in after we have a bunch of folks online. My name is Barry Jordan. I'm the project manager with DSI. Our company has been contracted with OSSI to develop an enterprise grants management system. Today's session is on the competitive application process within the electronic grants management system. Before we get started with this afternoon's session, I'd like to give Richard Rowley an opportunity to give a welcome from OSSI.
Yeah, welcome. Hey, I'm Richard Rowley. I work with the Office of Grants Management and Compliance here, and it's been a great opportunity for me to be able to work on this because I was thinking about it as I was walking over here, like, hey, we have a lot of things to do, and the more time that we have to do other things would be great. So EGMS, that's kind of like what it is that we plan on having with the application. I know that you guys might have had to go to like a number of different places to look for the different applications and pull it from here and then call this individual. With EGMS, it's all going to be housed underneath one like area. So you'll be able to see what it is that's available to apply for, also what it is that you have created. And one of the parts I really like a lot is that, so like basically the two big questions that we end up getting here is, where's your application at, and also where's my reimbursement. So one of the features that Mary's going to show to you today is an area in EGMS where you can see that you'll be able to upload your information for reimbursement request, identify that information, and then submit it, and then you'll also be able to see in the process where that's at, like who at OSSI is taking a look at that, what date that was that they took a look at it, when it was approved. We're going to improve the turnaround process so that if your reimbursement is not accepted, it's rejected, you can pretty much, like, it could happen as soon as like 5 minutes after submitting that. So once you submit it, if someone at the program takes a look at it and they say, oh wait, no, this first thing is wrong, they can send it back to you immediately. You can change that and modify that, and that can happen within 5 minutes. So hopefully this offers you guys, and just to tie it back to like what we're really here for, hopefully this will let you guys know and help you have a lot more time to help the district's learners. So thank you very much for showing up and attending today. We look forward to helping out with anything. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I think my information is inside here, and hope you enjoy this time with Barry.
Hey, Richard, is LaShawn going to come in down to do learning support initiatives?
Not for this portion of things, because that's just mostly for Title I.
Okay.
And anyone who's going to be applying for Title I funds.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Good deal. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so today's agenda, actually, first of all, I just want to take 2 seconds and ask you to give your name and what organization you're representing for the folks who are here live.
Okay. Good afternoon, JMO Mitchell. I work for OSSI Operations.
Okay.
Valerie Brown, and I'm with Elementary Secondary Education. Jeanette Flint with CPS, Office of Specialized Instruction.
Okay.
Shani Hill, CPS, Office of Specialized Instruction.
Okay, great.
Nancy Mann, Office of Grants Management and Compliance here at OSSI. Nicole Copeland with the EGMS.
Suresh Patrick.
Great, thank you very much. So for today's agenda, we had an introduction from Richard from Dr. Morris Hughes' office. What are we expecting today? Some of you have had the ability to take advantage of some of our UAT testing sessions where you actually have been logged into the system playing around. For those of you who haven't, this is really your first introduction to the EGMS system. I'm going to walk through kind of the basics of central data collection, completing a competitive application, and submitting a reimbursement request. So we want to use today as kind of a kickoff to what you're going to see. We still have a couple of edits that we're making prior to a June 6th launch. There is an LEA conference scheduled at Gallaudet University on the 11th of June, and for the CBO community, their conference is on the 25th of June, also at Gallaudet University. We're going to talk about Phase 1 assurances and completion of central data requirements, understand how the EGMS shows deadlines, We're going to complete a funding application. We're going to see how you get comments back from OSSI on a returned application. And also we're going to complete a reimbursement request. When you leave today, I hope you'll have a better understanding of how to request new credentials. I'd like for you to understand user roles and how they work, how to log on to the system, how to create and submit central data collection requirements, as well as general and phase 1 assurances. Again, creating and submitting a funding application, and viewing comments from OSSI and how to resubmit, and also creating and submitting a reimbursement request. So before we get started, let's just talk about general roles within the system. We have 3 primary roles for the LEA community. There's an authorized representative role. The authorized representative is someone who is allowed to commit or bind the organization fiscally and financially. That is the only role that will actually be able to submit an application, agree to assurances, or submit a reimbursement request. The data entry role has all the other rights. They can input data, they can save data. The only thing the data entry role cannot do is actually submit a legally binding entry on behalf of the LEA. And then we have a view-only role. The view-only role is actually what it says. You can log into the system, you can see everything, but you can't enter any data, and you can't submit anything. So from a global perspective, I just want to help you understand how the system is set up. Once you log into the EGMS system, there's a screen that's going to pop up based on your credentials and what you can do, and you'll be able to hit a link and go somewhere. The primary link is the Access Select, which will open you up to your control panel, for lack of better terminology. Within that control panel, you'll have access to central data. Central data, if you will, is really more central office, global information about your agency. There's general information. Where applicable, you will be completing learning support initiatives section. For those of you which may not be applicable to this room, we have a similar functionality for pre-K, which is early learning support objectives. There are assurances. We have global assurances, which span across all applications. Then we have phase 1 assurances for the consolidated application and phase 1 assurances for the SPED IDEA Part B. Now, the way the assurances are broken down, general assurances, once you agree to them, you don't have to agree to them again within the calendar year. There will be some grant-specific assurances that you will agree to based on a specific grant that aren't covered in this general assurances section. Once you complete the central data, then we can create an application. There's a narrative portion. Again, application-specific assurances, if applicable. There are some grants that all of their assurances are included in the general, so you won't see a separate assurances tab. There's a budget development section where you go into line-by-line detail on building your grant budget. And then within that create application function, there's a submit application for review and approval. Before this session, we were talking about formula grants. Formula grants have a suggested due date. Competitive grants have a very specific due date and due time. If a grant is due, if an application is due at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on whatever day, at 2:01, the submit button goes away. You will no longer be able to submit an application after that point. And after you submit, there are a couple of things that can happen from the OSSI perspective. OSSI can review it and send you a thanks for trying, not this time. They could send you a your grant has been deemed non-responsive. If you are in fact awarded, you will get a notification of award, which at that time you will be able to submit reimbursement requests. And there is a review cycle with OSSI on reimbursement requests, not on your application. And I'll modify that a little bit when we talk about award, and then notification of approved reimbursement request. So June 2nd, we're going to have a new login page. This login page wants to be the center of activity for grants under OSSI. There will be an announcement section, general information, training information, notice of funding availability. Now, OSSI will still do the public notices that they've been doing, but this one centralized website will show you everything there is when grants are becoming available and anything that OSSI is doing around grants. There will also be a calendar of upcoming events and a log on. Within this log on, if you have an existing username and password, now Nancy has sent out information to the community of folks who are registered with OSSI to request a preload of usernames and passwords. So if your organization has submitted that to OSSI and we've gotten it internally, you'll just be able to type in your email address, which is going to be your username, and your password, and you'll go right into the system. For people,
When you say your password, do you mean your regular password, or they have to choose?
no, for your program, we are going to send you, your username will be your email address. We'll send you an initial password. Once you get in, you'll be asked to change that. Okay. So let's say you weren't preloaded for some reason. What happens when you select the new user button? Well, if your organization is already registered with OSSI, it's going to ask you for your federal EIN number. When you plug in that federal EIN number, it's going to pull down the name of the person who's the security representative for your organization. And that person can then log in and create a user password somewhat instantaneously. If you're a truly new organization to OSSI, then what will happen is you'll be directed to two links. One link is a W-9 form, and one link is for a master collection data template that OSSI requires that you submit. You will have to download both of those documents, complete them, sign them, and reattach them to the request. That information then will be sent to an OSSI representative for review and approval. You will either get notification saying, welcome to the system, here is your initial password, or you'll be getting a rejection notification. This process can take up to 48 hours. So in terms of a competitive grant, if your organization does not have a username and password, please do it as early as possible. Okay, so now we've talked about user roles, and let me go back here. So when you sign into the login page, this is the tab you're going to see. If you can do multiple functions with your role, you will see it on this page, and you'll be able to select which area of the site you want to go into. For purposes of this training session, this GMS Access Select takes you to your primary headquarters, so to speak. Okay? So when you log in, this is going to show you, I'm going to collapse everything. So you're new to the site. This is the first thing you're going to see when you log in. These chevrons, as we call will drop down and expand. So you'll see on the created side any grants that you have created, including this central data section. Now, we are updating the site so that where central data is now, you'll also see a drop down for CONAP Phase 1 assurances and a second drop down for IDEA Part B assurances. Down at the bottom, you'll also see an available chevron. If you select that, you'll be able to see what grants are available to apply for. So what's important here, you'll see formula, discretionary, or competitive. You'll see the name of the grant. You'll also see the submission due date. For competitive grants, you'll see a date and time if a specific time has been set for that application. And you'll also see a create button. Okay, again, just navigating through the system, you're going to use these chevrons to expand any application. In the case of consolidated applications, you'll see the name of the grant and sub-programs within that grant. So for the consolidated application for Part B, you'll see these are the sub-grants that roll up to this consolidated application. Okay. Again, these chevrons are prevalent throughout the site, and they provide levels of detail. For competitive grants, it's the same thing. Okay. In the case for DC Pay, you'll enter a project title before you can create. Same for DC School Garden Grant. And you'll enter a project title and hit create, and it will create a new application for you. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is just go back up to, I'm going to close. Let's go back and close these. And let's go to this central data section. And this being the test environment, we've actually created one, but had you not created this central data, you would select create. So I'm just going to open this central data section so that you can see what it looks like. So this is the typical format for any grant you're going to find within the system. It's going to read from left to right. The background for the tab that you're viewing is in white. If it's behind, it's in blue. And this tab structure can have 2 or 3 separate levels within, depending upon how the grant was designed. You'll have your applicant name, the name of the application. This cycle means version. Is it an original application? Is it Amendment 1, 2, 3, or 4? If you see Amendment 1, for instance, then you know you have a completed original application. Okay? You'll see the funding cycle, and over to the right there's another drop down for central data. If there were sub-applications underneath that, you selected that drop down, you'd see the sub-grants underneath that. You also see navigation back to your GMS Access Select, which is your home page for lack of better terminology. Okay, so we're in central data. All grants start with an overview page. Why are you here? When is this application due? What programs does it cover? What's the purpose? Links to any legislation and general information. And again, you'll find the same setup with all the grants that we're developing within the system. Okay. So for applicable grant programs, the district is initiating what's called learning support initiatives. It was originally classroom support strategies. The name we've changed a couple of times. But this is really
What is it called?
it's learning support initiatives is what the final name is. And that's basically where where Asi is saying you can determine up to 15 different focus initiatives that your organization is going to drive all your efforts into. This is a planning level. Once you define what your learning support initiatives are, they will be flowed down into your budget section of the application. So every expense, every budget item that you build, you want to direct to one of your 1 to 15 learning support initiatives. And we'll ask you for a 25-character description for a column heading, and then what's the specific detail beneath it. Hello. Beneath this, at a planning level, Asi wants to understand, given this first learning support initiative, which grant program do you think you're going to be contributing money against that learning support initiative? Again, this is at a planning level, and there are no dollars associated with this level. There are no percentages, and it's just your initial guess as to how you're going to fund this particular learning support initiative. And again, the system allows you to input up to 15, and all your activities will be directed to one of the 15. There's a similar functionality for early learning, which is now called early learning support objectives. There will be 4 specific early learning support objectives, and that's specific to pre-K. Okay, and it's the same basic functionality. All of your activities will be driven towards one of those 4. And when you're developing your budgets, and we'll show that a little later, when you're developing your budgets, then you'll identify which one of those 4 a particular budget line item is addressing. Now, this area for central contact. Again, at an administrative level, the administrative office, a DUNS number, SAM expiration date. Your SAM expiration date must be current in the time frame that you're submitting for reimbursement request. So it could be current today when you fill out your central data, but it could be set to expire in November. When Asi is going through looking at your reimbursement request, if your SAM number is not updated, they will send you a rejection of the claim saying that you have to update your SAM number so that it's current. Also, collecting administrative office information, the superintendent's name, the business manager. On these fields where data is required, where you see an asterisk, the asterisk means you have to fill it in, or else you're not going to be able to save or submit the page. We talked about assurances. In the central data section on the main page, I showed you where we were going to have a separate drop-down for consolidated assurances and IDEA assurances. When the system launches on the 2nd, you'll be able to go into these directly, and you won't see it as part of central data. General assurances, from a functionality perspective, what this means to you, you'll see a checkbox at the top. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a saved page. Okay? The saved page will only be viewable to the authorized representative of your organization. And you'll check this box saying that by checking this box and saving the page, the applicant hereby certifies that he or she has read, understood, and will comply with the assurances below. Very similar to accepting terms of a credit card online or anything else that you do online. Okay? So for general, you'll have to check it, go through and save. For the consolidated assurances, it's the same thing. Each individual page, there's a checkbox and a save. For the IDEA assurances, it's the same. You'll check the box. You'll read them and understand them. In some cases, you will have to select a radio button and enter a comment or narrative description and save page. Before you can submit an application on the competitive side or formula side, all the appropriate assurances have to be checked, page has to be saved that you have reviewed them and you accept them. And then assurances agreement, when you see this on the second, these check boxes for general assurances, CONAP assurances, IDA, SPED assurances will be pre-checked as you complete the assurances in the appropriate section. If it's not appropriate for your grant, then you won't be required to review and approve them. And this is where the legal entity agrees. So assurances were fully agreed to on this date, and then the authorized representative can then hit this button, and that automatically approves your assurance submittal. Allocation summary is a summary of all your allocations, or be it formula or competitive. Okay, it shows the allocation. This column reallocated, released, again, prior year funds. If you denied allocations, they will be reallocated. The system also allows for carryover of unused prior year funds. What the system will do is at the end of the 2014 fiscal year, OCFO will give us your balance of funds unspent that you're going to carry forward. It will then, when you start submitting, you'll see that on your revised budget for the year. And again, this is where applicable. Some competitive programs don't allow carryover. When you submit reimbursement requests, the system will actually draw down from oldest money first. And that's in an attempt to reduce or eliminate lapsing of funds. And then for the grant summary, you'll see how your money's been spent. Now, I'm going to log out of this clean LEA version, and I'm going to log in. We're using DCPS in our test environment. I just want you to see what a more active site might look like. Okay, so we use DCPS as part of our test site. So what you see is all the programs that you have received allocation, either through formula or competitive grant applications, allocations, current year fund summary, and then prior year fund summary. And then this is how you've spread your grants down over salaries and benefits, professional services, equipment, supplies and materials, etc. And again, this is central data, so this rolls everything up from all the grants that you've applied for. And within each grant, yes.
So in the EGMS 2, when you actually start spending at the end, does it actually track down what you're spending? Or
Yes.
is it just a snapshot of what you have?
No, it's live. It's updated once your application has been accepted and your budget has been finalized. That rolls into the system automatically.
So is it live once you process it?
It's live once, and we'll get to reimbursement request.
Gotcha.
It's live once you create it and submit it, okay, as pending. And then once it's paid, you'll see the status here as well.
So it only looks at paid as talk to pass, or it looks at financial?
Well, PTS and pass go away with this system. You go directly from this system to a batch payment to SOAR.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. The system reads SOAR on a nightly basis to see updates to the system, and depending upon the batch schedule, as soon as that batch is approved, if one of your reimbursement requests has been approved, you'll see that updated here as well.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Sorry, I thought I... Okay. In another view, these high-level views, really, you know, if you're logging in and you want to track the status of your organization, you're really going to be at central data level because that's where everything aggregates up to. We talked earlier about the learning support initiatives. Originally, we called them classroom support strategies. So you can see up to 15, wherever you're spending your money and have directed your budget, this shows you how much money you're spending on what you say is important to your organization. And you'll get the same view by object code, salaries and benefits, CBO, state admin, etc. Okay. For this role as authorized representative, you have the ability to lock and unlock the information in central data. So if you and your team have gotten together and you finalize all the information, as authorized representative, you can lock central data so no one can make any more edits. And at any given time, you can print an application. And by any given time, I mean the system will batch print electronic versions of an application every hour on the hour from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Friday. So if you want a copy of your application and it's 5 minutes after the hour, you put in the request, and I'm going to just select central data, and it's going to show a drop down of all the sections, and I want all the sections, so I'm going to request a print. Okay, so you see my request was made on 5/19 at 1:44 in the afternoon. Sometime like 2 minutes after 2, I'll come back to the same screen and you'll see completed request. You can open this from the link, and it's an electronic PDF document. You can also print a specific page. If you go to printer friendly, now you can print this page. But that's a single page at a time as opposed to printing the entire document. I'm going to log out and go back into the other clean site. Any questions so far? Okay, so what we've done, when you first log in and get your credentials, you're going to come in this central data section. You're going to go through all the sections that apply to you. You're going to fill them out and submit. Okay, and then data will be captured for use at a administrative level. Now, let's go back to the menu list. I'm going to go down to competitive grants, and I'm going to pick 21st Century. It's a single grant, and I'm going to select the Create button. Okay. So we said earlier that all these grants follow the same basic format. You're going to read from left to right. The white background means that's the tab you're on. In this particular case, the overview has a second tier of information. Again, we're going to start with background information, program, background, purpose. Towards the bottom, you'll see any particular links. And this one is guidance and legislation. And then for general information on this particular grant, here is the information. In addition to background information, there is a tab which describes the review process for a competitive application. And all the competitive applications are the same. In some applications, you will see the actual scoring rubric that's used by the readers of that, so you can understand once you submit your application, how are you going to be scored. There's nothing for you to do in this review section other than understand how your application is going to be viewed and scored. And then if I select the rubric section, you can see there are 9 criteria for this particular grant application. And again, it starts from, does it meet basic requirements? Okay, and these buttons don't do anything. These are really here just so you can see how the reader is going to review. You can see how many points can be awarded by section or based on your answer. Criteria 3, 15 points is for needs and resource assessment. And again, this is really for you to understand what you're being graded on. Some applications will have this level of detail. Some applications will have a single page that says 25 points for this section, 25 points for this section, and so on. Now, back to the contact information page. This is for grant-specific information. Okay, so if I'm the authorized representative, and I know I have people on my program team that are working on this application, what I want to do is to select this button saying, hey, look, I have 1 to 5 people that I want to be notified anytime the system does something. if I'm awarded, if I'm rejected, if something has been approved, I want up to 5 other people to be notified via email along with myself. You just select this button saying, yes, I want someone else notified, and you can add up to 5 email addresses. Okay? So, again, we said anything that has an asterisk, you have to fill it out. So I'm just going to use this page as an example of what happens. Okay. So I hit enter by mistake, and I get an error message. Grant manager information is required. Program contact information is required. On any one of these pages, wherever you're putting information in or selecting a radio button, there's a save page at the bottom. Okay, data entry people can save a page. View-only people will not see the button. Okay, so you can save pages along the way. You just can't submit the application. Okay, now for the purpose of this example, I'm going to leave off, I'm going to make sure the email address is incorrect. I'm going to try to save the page. Okay, so grant manager contact phone is not valid. Program contact email must be valid. Okay, so phone number, I left off a digit. So let's correct that. And I'm going to correct that. Okay, now, I made the first time I tried to save page, something was missing. I got a bunch of error messages. Now, I put in my information and I hit save page and nothing happened. Okay, this is not a positive affirmation system. You're not going to get a notification that says, congratulations, you have saved the page. If something's wrong, you'll get an error message. If not, you will be allowed to save the page. Okay, funding distribution. In the case of a formula grant, this information will be filled out in advance. In the case of a competitive grant, you won't know what your funding is until after the competition. Okay. Okay, so program information. This really gets into the meat and potatoes of completing the application. Now, what we've done is we've worked with the program folks here at OSSI to take a paper application and try to create a web version of it. The content should be very familiar to you. Where it actually sits and what it looks like in its web form, it may take a minute to get used to. Okay, so program information. You'll need an abstract. You can type in up to 2,000 characters. Again, there's a save page, there's a spell check. Okay, as you type in information, it's counting your characters so you know how close you're getting. Okay, so let's save this page. No error messages, I'm good. It does not check to see that what you typed was good. All it says was that something was entered in the field and that was required.
Excuse me, does the spell check also the grammar check or the spell check?
All right. It's spelling and grammar, I believe. I know spelling It should be grammar as well. Can you, Nancy, just write down that question. Is it spelling grammar? Okay. And I'll try one to see. Okay, so let me do this. Okay, so it saved that just fine. So we'll have to ask if there's a grammar function as well.
You spelled it, you wrote it incorrectly, and
Right.
highlighted it?
Right.
Yeah, I can read from here.
It says, can help me.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But the spelling is correct, though.
Yeah, spelling is correct.
Okay, so it
Doesn't do grammar. And we will.
I remember trying it for spell checks when they didn't identify.
Really?
When we did when we brought in the reviewers to help, we purposely did that. I just pointed out to Darren. So.
Well, we have done a lot of updating, yes, since. So we probably got that information from the user acceptance test and corrected it.
Instead of formats from other sources, so if I type that section criteria on one Microsoft Word, cut and paste in there with the same
Cut and paste is some characters from Word don't translate over in web form. So you just have to be careful once you paste it in. Just read it through and make sure. You may have to go back in and put dashes or something if the characters don't come over. Competitive priority points. Okay, and here's where you will decide, let's see, yes, no, no, yes, and then you'll fill out the section. Okay, so it's letting you save the section. For needs assessment, you'll fill out the information for needs assessment.
In that section, does it limit the amount of characters you use or words?
Hold 1 second. In this section, you have up to 2,000, up to 2,000. Yeah, and we did this based on, there are some general requirements that we kept, and in the instance when we're working with the program office, if they wanted more character spacing, we allowed that.
That's going to be a problem for us. When you talk about new assessment, you're talking about all the issues that they have that makes them need. They have to make their case in order to justify a need for the program.
Okay.
And usually people write like 2, 3 pages.
Well,
So 2,000, I thought the 2,000 was just going to be for the abstract, but not for those components.
well, if you want to have this change to increase the character count, who did this grant for you, Dan? Send Dan an email and just ask him for the needs assessment page.
It would be all the components, all the 5 major components. There's the need assessment, there's the program design,
Well, let's see what
the
he did.
evaluation, all those.
Let's see. See, in program design, we have 5,000 characters. It was just in the needs assessment.
That should be. See, they all have similar weight. So
Okay,
we
needs
need
assessment
as much
is 2.
information as possible.
Okay, so if you can just send Dan a note. Let me see what section C4. 2, we have
And
5,000 characters.
Which grant is that?
This is 21st century. So let me just go back. The abstract has 2,000.
that's fine. That's
Okay. So it's on needs assessment C3.
See,
C3 that you'd like 5,000 characters instead of 2.
5,000 characters. How many pages are we talking about?
That's probably about 2 pages, a little bit more.
Okay. Not worth it.
No, I think a page is about 2,000 characters.
Okay.
And then program and staff training, program evaluation and monitoring, sustainability. And that first tab seems to be the only one that only had 2,000 characters.
Okay.
Okay, so again, based on the grant application, what you're going to see is program information and some stuff. Okay, and again, you just follow from left to right. We went from overview to contact to funding distribution, which on a competitive grant is going to be 0 because you didn't win it yet, to program information. And in this particular case, the program wants attachments. Okay, so I'm actually going to attach a document. So I selected it. Now I'm going to upload it. Okay, and here is my document. 519. This is my test document that I just uploaded. And again, most of the content, most of the text or content of these applications you're very familiar with. This is just a web version of your application. Now, planning expenditures. This tab format runs across all the grants that we have under detailed planning expenditures. This is where you're building your budget, your line item budget. There's a budget overview with wording that's specific to the program. Then we ask you to detail salaries and benefits, professional services, property services, equipment, supplies and materials, fixed property costs, and other objects. We're using the same collection methodology across the board, whether it's a formula grant or a competitive grant. And the reason for that is, at some point, OSSI needs to be able to report on across its empire, so to speak, where is the grant money being spent. In this case, for salaries and benefits, okay, so we actually have to create. Now, this grayed out space, total allocation available for budgeting. In a competitive grant, there is no allocation available when you're submitting the application. It always starts off at 0 because you're building your request. Okay? So in this particular case, we're going to put in okay, so for 21st century, these are the program categories that you're allowed to expense budgets against. So I'm going to pick 10 for instruction. Again, we talked about the learning support initiatives up front that we did in central data. When you put in your 1 through 15, they'll come in the form of a drop-down. So you can say this particular person's salary is going to be directly related to this. And really what we're looking for, you know, where is the primary salary going? We're not asking you to break down his salary over 4 or 5 or 10 places. Another thing to note is the site drop-down. 000 indicates central office. We have 2 different types of budgeting that's allowable. There is central office budgeting, which covers the entire LEA, and there's campus-based budgeting. Campus-based budgeting allows you to budget down to the number of schools or campuses you have within your organization. and it's done by grant. This particular grant is not campus-based. It's central office-based. So you'll see 000 with no drop-down available underneath that. And let's say this person is going to be, his time can be allocated against safe school programs, estimated hours per month. Let's say 80. And we're going to say this is a $15,000. At the bottom of pages, you will also see something that says calculate totals and save page. Calculate totals is a function that's performed on the page. It doesn't save anything. Okay, so if you had 10 line items listed and you wanted to see it total up, you'd hit calculate totals. So in this particular instance, we did calculate totals. It brought down $15,000. And because we had no allocation, that's why you see a negative number there. And now we're going to save this page. Okay. Sum of all planned expenditures to budget category 100 cannot exceed 50% of the total amount budgeted. Well, that only means, in this case, since this is the first budget item we've put in, we have to add more budget items in order so that this category can't be more than 50%. So I'm just going to go to,
So you can't save the one, right?
well, I didn't get a warning. I mean, I didn't get an error.
Okay.
I got a warning. And this is really more when you're completing your application, just remember.
Gotcha.
Okay? You can submit with warnings. You just can't submit with errors. All right, so I'm going to go to professional services, and I'm going to say okay, and just so we can even ourselves out, I'm going to make this $20,000. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to calculate totals. And you can see my total budgeted now increased. I still have not saved the page. So if I navigate away from this page, that number goes away. So now I'm going to save page. Okay. So now you'll see in category 100, which was salaries and benefits, there's my $15,000. In category 300, which is professional services, I have $20,000. So you'd go through all these tabs, and when you finished, this is what you would see. You have two budget lines, one for instruction, one for student transportation, and the percent of cost by category. Okay? So this is where you put in information and you come back and track. Remember, the thing to remember when you're completing these applications, before you leave a page, save it. Even if you're going to come back and add more information, save your page before you move forward. Okay? In this particular case for 21st Century, 21st Century is a 3-year grant. Okay? It requires that years 2 and 3 match the funding level for year 1. Okay, so I'm just...
You didn't save a page. Will it also save for you?
There's
Like
no,
Word does?
no, there's no auto save. So, you know, if you're going to go away from your computer for a while, save your page. Okay. So year 2, I'm just going to say we're spending the same amount of money, 35,000 and 35,000, and you'll determine what categories. We're going to calculate the totals, and then I'm going to save this page. And again, I didn't get any error messages, so I'm good. Okay? As long as I don't receive error messages, I'm good. Now, on our assurances tab, because remember I said some grant programs have specific assurances, here are the specific assurances for this particular grant. Okay, so in addition to already having agreed to general assurances in the central data section, within the grant application itself, you're going to have to review and agree to these assurances as well. So there's program specific, organization specific, and again, you're going to have to scroll down to the bottom and hit Save Page. And for this example, why don't we just do that? That box is checked. So I'm going to come down and hit Save Page. I'm going to go to organization specific. Okay. And my box is checked. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to hit Save Page. And then Assurances Agreement page. Okay, so you'll see on this page, I have agreed to program-specific assurances, and that's where the checkbox comes in. I have agreed to organization-specific assurances. That's where the checkbox is. But it said that I did not agree to the assurances in central data. Okay, so I would have to go back to central data, open up assurances, agree to them in central data, and then when I came back here, you'd see a date in which you save the assurances in central data. And then you click Legal Entity Agree, and then today's date will populate in this field. Okay? Again, where an application doesn't have application-specific assurances, you won't see this page. You will have agreed to the general, and you go forward from there. Now, let's talk about Submit for a moment. And I'm going to log out of this, and I'm going to log back into DCPS for a moment.
I'm going to ask another question.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to print it, would it have the page numbers?
I'll open one and we can see.
And the other thing would be, would the name of the organization be on each page?
It should. I'll open one and we'll see how it prints. Okay, I'm just going to go into DCPS. I'm going to open one of the applications that's returned for review. I'm on a submit page, and I'm doing what's called a consistency check. The consistency check is a feature that sweeps back through the entire application and makes sure that you have everywhere a piece of data was required, everywhere an upload was required, that you have fulfilled those requirements. In a competitive grant application, if you're missing something or if you didn't fill in a blank that was required, your application can be denied. Okay, this feature gives you the opportunity to do an auto sweep. In this particular case, it's returned a bunch of errors. Okay, and what you want to do is go to the application page that it's saying you have an error, correct it. Once you've corrected all the errors, you come back and do a consistency check. You can do as many consistency checks as you like until it says your application is ready to submit. Okay? One thing to remember, if you navigate away from this page all the errors that you pulled up during this consistency check goes away. In order for you to see them again, you have to run another consistency check. So if you're at this point and you get errors, do a print screen or copy and paste this information somewhere so you know where it is. Okay. The authorized representative also has the ability to lock an application or unlock an application so that data entry can be allowed or not. Okay. And I'm going to go back to application print. Earlier we requested an application be printed. It moved from request to now it's in the completed jobs. And I'm going to click on it now. So here's the electronic version of that application that we requested. Okay, so I don't get a page number. Okay, so you're getting electronic page numbers, and you get to know which application you printed. Let me go back here for just a minute. You really have to know which application you're in. So when you open it, you can save it for your organization and which application it is. So,
Is it possible to add the number?
good question.
The reason I'm asking because I can assure you that for the review, the Sun Percentage application is a very long application compared to other applications. And the reviewers who I've spoken to have already assured me that there can be different them to read them in the comfort of their own space and time.
Okay.
And so I can see them maybe print more than one, and then you have the issue of the pages mixed out.
Except there are no page numbers on the web sheet. Okay, so what you're getting here is the actual web page.
Because I can print some applications offline, and I would need to get the number. The numbers were on there from another state, but they don't use it.
Okay, so another question to Dan would be, can you put page numbers on when you do the print function? And I don't know the answer to that question. We'll see what the answer is to that question. Okay, and then application history. In this particular case, this is an amendment, so we can see that this amendment was submitted to OSSI by the district rep on 2/28 and is returned for changes by Rhonda Kardash on this date. Now, for competitive grants, once you've submitted your application, OSSI then reviews readers' score, and they have an opportunity to either award you the funding that you were requested, not reward you funding, or to award you something less or more than you requested. So if what you submitted for was $15,000, but they awarded you $20,000, then in this particular case, they would send your application back and ask you to revise your budget to the award amount that they gave you. Okay? And that's where you would see it here. Okay? So we've gone through central data, assurances, and walking through an application to get it completed and submitted. Okay, what I'd like to do now is to take it's 2:20, let's take a 10-minute break and then come back at 2:30 and we'll go through the reimbursement submittal process.
You know, we were looking at the application earlier today.
Yes.
Sorry. And some of the commands or things that we think should be included we submitted that as early as February 28th, and those changes were not made, including like the spelling error.
Which
But I thought we were sure that it wasn't there.
did
So
you
what
create
we-
a did you create a new application, or did you look?
No, I'm saying, but we set those comments on February 28th.
Hold on one second.
Charlie's putting an email together. That's somebody. But I thought, having said it so long, so put the everything down.
how are you?
I'm fine.
Good. My impression is
Hey.
the user manual, and this is kind of a little flow chart showing you how the
Okay.
review.
Okay. So now we just completed submitting an application. In the instance of a competitive grant where your application is deemed responsive and you've actually been given an award, in this case we're going to say you've been awarded more or less than you submitted on your application. So we want to know, how do we get those comments and feedback from OSSI to make a change? Okay, so again, I'm going back to, I'm going to use this consolidated application because it was actually submitted. And I'm going to click on the Review Summary tab. I'm going to select the primary reviewer, and then I want to see the review checklist. When you select Review Checklist, what's going to pop up in a separate browser window is the comments that the reviewer made about your application. In this particular case, the effective staffing strategy summary is comprehensive. The answer was no, and they'll enter some comments. Okay? In this particular case, if your application was returned and said you've been awarded $60,000 as opposed to $50,000, or you've been awarded $40,000 as opposed to $50,000, it would say, please revise your budget detail to equal $50,000 or $40,000 or $60,000. Okay, so this is how you would get the response back from OSSI. Okay, so you'd come back and you go back to your home page, so to speak. You'd open the application in question that was returned for changes. You make whatever edits. You do a consistency check, and you'd resubmit. Okay? And that process is similar for reimbursement request. If there is something in a reimbursement request that's not being allowed, you'll get the same return for revise and resubmit with comments that you can read. You don't have to wait to get someone on the phone. You don't have to look for a separate email. It all comes through the system. Okay. So now let's take a look at submitting a reimbursement request. Now, once you've signed your assurances, submitted your application, and been awarded a grant with a budget, from that point on, you can submit a reimbursement request. Again, will be issued for you so that you know you've received the award. So I'm going to go into, you can only submit a request against an approved application. In this case, for Amendment 1, it's return for changes. I can't submit a payment against something that's been returned for changes. So I have to go back to the original application that's on file, the only approved document in this case. And I want to select payments. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to see a payment summary. So for the grant in question, you will see what your payments are. In this case, it's a consolidated application with 4 subgrants. In the case of 21st Century, it will just be a single line item for subgrants for 21st Century. Okay, and you'll see current year allocation, pending reimbursement request, completed, and remaining balance. Okay, now I would select View Reimbursement Request Periodic Reports. And I'm going to say for Title I. So here you can see the complete history of reimbursement requests against this grant. is a radio button, which within the system, if you want to select a grant or reimbursement request, you'll select one of the radio buttons, and then open request. If you want to create a new request, you can create a new request, select the radio button to delete, or hit review summary. But this is the reimbursement request number, the date it was created. Within the submission, you'll have to put a range of dates that the submission covers, the date it was submitted, a final approval date, a status, and the status date. Okay? For every reimbursement request that you submit, it's going to show up here. Okay? So I'm actually going to pick, let's say, reimbursement request number 20, and I want to open it because I want to complete it and submit it so I can get paid. Okay, so again, when we did the budget in the application submittal, we had funding in a number of different categories. For this particular grant, we have funding in category 100, which is salaries and benefits, for instruction and non-set-aside. So now I'm going to try to create a request against that, but I'm going to do a couple of things that are not correct. So I'm going to say budget category is, I'm going to use 300. And I'm going to say my program category is support services. My program activity is professional development. I'm going to pick a site, and I'm going to say this is test data. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. And I'm going to say this was for the period 01. Oops. I'm going to say 05/01/14 to 05/31. I'm going to take this month. In this particular case, this program is requiring that a document be uploaded. Some programs do not require that documents or backup be uploaded when you submit a payment request. Some of them do. In this particular case, I'm not going to upload anything. I think I'm good. I'm going to calculate my totals.
What would that document be?
Could be a document from your accounting system that shows salaries and benefits paid over that month. Okay, could be receipts that you were attaching. Okay, so
is that a requirement?
On this particular grant, documentation is required.
Okay.
On your particular grant, you may not have required an upload of documentation. Okay, so we did a calculate totals. Did I put an amount in? That's the one thing I didn't do. I'm going to say $15,000 or $15,550. And I'm going to calculate totals. Okay. So for this payment requisition or this payment request, I'm submitting for $15,550. I think I'm good to go. I'm going to save the page. And when I save the page, I get a bunch of errors. Okay. What the system has been designed to do is to check for, I want to say, typical errors on submission. We did that on the front with a consistency check. Okay? We do it on the back end in a reimbursement request with a saved page. So what this is telling me is, based on this grant, you cannot submit expenses for a time in advance of today's date. So expense period can't be after 5/19. For category 300, we didn't have any budget allocated. Okay? So we were submitting a request against category 300. we didn't have any budget. It's not going to allow you to submit a request against a line item that has no budget. Okay? And also, object code 20, we only had object code 10 in our budget. Okay? So we have to now go correct this in order for it to be allowed. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to say, okay, it's really salaries and benefits, and it's really instruction, and the program activity is really non-set aside. And again, all of this was set up in the application budget development section. Okay? And we're still good with the amount. And we're going to come down here and we're going to say, okay, this date was wrong. So we're going to say 5/19, and we're going to save page. Okay? Looks like we're good so far. Okay? So now, in addition to save page, then we have to certify and submit. Okay? Data entry personnel will not see this certify and submit button. You'll see the save page button. Only the authorized representative will see this certify submit. So now I'm going to certify submit, and it gives me another error. File upload is required. Okay? Again, what we're trying to do with this system is trying to eliminate as much as we can the common causes of angst when submitting applications and reimbursement requests. So what the system cannot do is read what was submitted. The application can determine that something was submitted. So in this particular case, I'm actually going to submit a file. Okay, and I'm going to save page. And you'll see this is the document that was attached. Okay. And if I want to open that document, I can, just to make sure it was the right document, the right information. And I can close that, and now I can certify and submit. Okay, so this request has been submitted. No more updates will be saved. I can create a new one, okay, but this request is gone. Okay, so now let's go back. And we were on request 20. We submitted it on the 19th. The status is submitted to OSSI. Okay? Immediately upon your satisfying all the requirements to submit and it accepts the submit, whoever on the OSSI program side is responsible to review reimbursement requests gets an email that says, someone from this program just submitted a reimbursement request for you to review and approve. Okay? So, here's good news, bad news. Good news is it's instantaneous. You don't have to leave your desk. It's not a whole bunch of fuss. Let's say you have a let's say you have a reimbursement request with 100 line items, and 2 of the line items are not approved. They're in the right budget. You have the right categories, but for some reason those 2 line items aren't approved. The way this system operates, it's 100% approval or nothing. Okay, so you'll get back a revise and resubmit saying we are rejecting these 2 line items. You have a couple of options. You can delete those 2 line items and resubmit immediately, in which now you'd have a 100% approved reimbursement request. You can take those 2 line items and submit them separately in another request if you feel strongly. Or if you, let's say you had to go back and get additional documentation, but it was going to take you a couple of days to get the additional documentation and you needed to get the payment requisition in today. For those 2, you submit a new payment request with whatever the required information was, and you can submit that. You can submit an unlimited number of reimbursement requests through the system. It's limitless. It's really between you and your program office how many times you're going to be submitting a reimbursement request. Okay?
So no partial payment is that?
No more partial payments. It's 100% or nothing. Okay? Just gets difficult to track the 2% or the 5% or the 10% that didn't get approved, and when does it go back in? Where is it at the end of the day? So it's 100% that's required. Okay? And the way the system is set up to work, once you submit a request and it's approved by OSSI, that request is going to go into a batch. Those batch payments, approved payments, will go to the SOAR system twice a week or once a month, depending upon how OSSI sets it up. And once it goes to SOAR and gets paid, you will then have notification of it. So I'm going to go back to so when you then open a reimbursement request in the future, if it's been paid, you'll see a document number or a check or electronic funds transfer number. You'll get some information from SOAR that confirms that a payment was made in a certain amount on a certain date and time. Okay? All right, so what have we covered? Logging in, navigating to the GMS Access Select, completing assurances, and then selection and completion of the desired grant application. Okay, and key takeaways. So after today, requesting credentials will be available after June 2nd. May take up to 48 hours if you haven't previously submitted your credential information. Always remember to save the page before navigating away from that page. If you don't, you're going to lose the data. Correct errors before you leave a page. You must perform a consistency check before you can submit an application, and it may take up to 45 seconds to run the consistency check. And the consistency check is only on submitting an application. All the errors have to be cleared before you can submit. And then review and agree to Phase 1 assurances, general assurances, and application-specific assurances. So that's the EGMS overview. The system's going online June 2nd. You will get credentials if your organization has already followed up with OSSI with their requests for users, and you can go online and start playing. So again, training on the 11th of June for LEAs and on the 25th of June for CBOs. On the website, there'll be links to helpful information, training documents. OSSI has set up a help team here that has an email address and phone if you have navigation questions. If you have program-specific questions, you'll have to contact the program on application-specific information. What do you mean by this question? If it's, I can't log in, that's something the help desk can help you with. Okay?
I have two questions.
Yes, please.
One, we're getting ready to publish our thing.
Yes.
So I want to know, in terms of our reviewer, who would be responsible for training those people?
We will have a training. The question was, who's responsible for training reviewers for application? We will have training sessions for your readers. So on competitive side, they're readers. Somewhere near the application due date, we'll have a training session for readers.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because they need to be trained on, once the applications come in, how do they access the system and review and score.
So who do I contact?
You can talk to Nancy,
Okay.
and I think we have we put together a training schedule yet for readers, Nicole?
We put a date. We put an anticipated date.
Okay. Okay. So we do have an anticipated date for reader training.
Okay, my next question is it possible for you to have a tutorial on where it's not live?
Yes. We have taped some of the sessions that we're going to put online for people to go to, and we'll have other resource material to help people navigate through the system as well.
So would I be able to go through what you just did without it being live? Put some
Yes.
suspicious numbers in there and just go through the entire process of reimbursement and the entire process of application completion?
Yes, we can work with you to do that now if you like. Kind
No,
of
I mean,
outside.
at my own time and my own convenience.
Yes.
My desk.
Yes, we can take care of that for you.
Not me, just about anybody who goes out there and sign on.
No, there is no, I mean, remember, nothing's submitted. You can, if you're, okay, so here's the question. Can I log onto the system and somehow walk through and kind of play and get used to the system? The answer is yes. You can open an application, fill it out, and delete it. Once you delete it, it's gone. It never occurred, which that's good news, bad news. Because if you're completing a for real application and you hit delete, it's gone. So just remember that. But yes, in the instance where you're just trying to get comfortable with submitting information, you can create an application online, go through all the pages, and when you're finished in your test version, you can delete it, and it's gone. Okay?
And the same for reimbursement.
Reimbursements, the same thing, but you have to have an approved application to do a reimbursement request. So once you have an approved application, you can create a reimbursement request, play around with it, and delete it. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you all very much. Keep your eye out for June 2nd. When the URL becomes live, that information will be publicly available, and then you can log in and have fun.
Good job.
Great. Thank you very much.